Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to Shexel Live, and we are actually live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And it is an honor to be on your feed today. All right, so we have a very special episode today. We're going to be looking at a customization, all right, a job request, which we're going to be smashing very, very quickly. And we're actually very busy, but we decided to prioritize this one because it's not going to take too much time. All right, so if you're joining us for the first time, you're welcome to Shexel Live, and that is an exciting time with all of you guys. So without wasting time, let me just get right into it. All right, so if you're joining us for the first time, this is Shexel Live, and this is where we actually come your way with a lot of insights into how we've been customizing some of our templates, how to use some of our templates, and basically some of the best practices that you need to be aware of, and the fact that we can actually make your work much more exciting, much more interesting, to make your HSC communication much easier. All right, so without wasting time, we're just gonna get right into the template. Okay, so let me just reduce the volume a little bit. All right, so yesterday's job order, we actually finalized that, but we are still making sure that we get final clearance from the from those who requested for it, I mean the user, so that we can actually tweak one or two things. Right, so everything went smooth. It was quite a long session, but we were able to finish it. Right, so today we're going to look at an interesting template. All right, so basically we got a request from one of our users, and this was a request, right? So I'm just going to lower it a little bit. All right, so that's right there. Hi Sel, how you mate? Long time no speak. Quick one, bud. How much to tailor a spreadsheet to show closure rates per line and overall percentage of closure to compliance for the attached, and feed into a sheet you've done before, right? So this is actually a user or one of our users of our template, and he actually reached out to us to do another customization for him, and this is something that shouldn't take too much time, right? So we're gonna get right into it. We're gonna look at the template that he actually presented to us. So I'm just gonna switch my screen right now. All right, and I'm gonna share the screen here. All right, so if you're joining us for the first time, you're welcome to Shexel Live. All right, so Shexel Live is where we actually customize templates, and you can actually let us customize your template for you, or you can take inspiration from how we do it. All right, okay, so I'm just gonna share the screen. This is a very small screen. Okay, I'm gonna remove this one. And I'm gonna bring this one in there. All right, okay, so this is basically the screen that we have here, that I'm gonna be showing exactly what we are doing, right? So I have a lot of things on the screen, because we've been doing so what you call designing all of these thumbnails ourselves. So I have my Canva open right there. Okay, so basically I'm just gonna open this very sheet. All right, so this is the sheet the gentleman sent to us, and this sheet is really about the fact that they are tracking various activities related to their SOPs, right? So they have a list of SOPs, and they have some important parameters they are looking at. So for each of the SOPs, they are counting how many risk assessments has been done. All right, so in fact, these are like various work activities, right? Various work activities, and they have the SOP referencing them, right? So you're looking at the number of risk assessments. Okay, not really the number. This is the risk assessment number that relates to this SOP. And then they have some parameters. They're looking at SOP that has been reviewed, or whether SOP has been reviewed, whether text has been updated, whether photo has been updated, whether new SOP has been reviewed, whether risk assessment is available, whether risk assessment has been completed, and whether the managers have signed off. All right. So these are basically the parameters of this template, right? So they have the SOPs, and they have a set of activities they are carrying out around the SOP, such as reviewing the SOP, updating the text, making sure photos are updated, making sure some parameters, risk assessment is available, and all of that, right? So that is exactly what we have here. Now, this template is not properly well structured, right? It's not really well structured. So for us to be able to create a dashboard out of a template like this. What it means is that we need to restructure the template, because all of these are on separate, sections of the sheet. They're all on separate sections, right? But for us to be able to create a dashboard, we need to make sure that all of these are actually in one Excel table. So what it means is that we're gonna be, deleting some of these, rows, rearrange the data. All right. So without wasting time, I'm just gonna get right into it. I'm going to, make the screen very big, right, so that you don't see me, right? So I'm just gonna get right into it, and I hope that you find this very interesting. All right. So this is basically us showing you how we create our template, okay? And the fact that we can support you, we can bring your, a lot of insights into your template. Your workflow is gonna be very smooth, okay? So without wasting time, at a glance, I know that these are categories. So these are all categories, right? And you can see that the parameters, the SOP structure is the same. There's always something here referencing the category. All of these are the same. So what it presupposes is that we're gonna restructure. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna insert another, basically another row in here, and all of these stuff I'm gonna bring them here. So later on I'm gonna do something to it. So I'm gonna do all of this. Control D. I copy this, paste here. Control D, right? So it doesn't really matter the formatting. So I'm going to copy this, paste here, Control D, right? And then when I'm done, I'm going to delete. Okay, so I'm going to delete some of these unnecessary, stuff, right? So now I've changed the structure. So I'm going to delete all of these. This one is going to remain, right? So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to make here category, because here's supposed to be the category. So I'm going to make here category. And here is going to be SOP. That's the SOP reference, right? I could call it SOP reference. All right. So now I've started with the structure of the template, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of this stuff. So now I've been able to merge that to the one above. I'm going to delete this because the title is the same, right? I'm going to delete this as well. The title is the same. So now we've sort of changed the structure of the template. What we're gonna do is that we're gonna Control A all of them. I like to keep the the font the same, right? So I'm gonna keep the font the same. I always like to work with Calibra Light. So we can make it like this, or probably let's maintain this very one. Okay, so let's maintain it. So it's like this. And what I'm gonna do next is that I am going to convert this to an Excel table, because we cannot be working with a template that is not in an Excel table, right? So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna select all of this. And I'm going to insert a table. Now the table has a header, right? So I make sure I keep the header, right? So now I've changed it like this, okay? And that means that I've started basically making provision for how we're gonna input some of the formulas in here and all of that. So I'm gonna get rid of this because I want to make sure that I'm focused on just the Excel table itself, right? So usually when it comes to creating templates, sometimes it can be going like this and all of that. I don't like that. So I just want to freeze panes, right? So if I go to review, I come to freeze panes, then I can go like this, right? So I don't have to be, so I want to always make sure I'm seeing what is here. I'm also seeing what is above. So I can go like this, I can come like this, right? So usually whenever we are creating templates, we want to get rid of all of these grid lines, right? Because these are disturbances, right? They all disturb the look of it. So we want to make sure we are keeping it clean. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to properly align, the text, right? So I'm going to just make sure that this one is properly centered. So as you can see, we've been able to just structure it. And the information here is not really necessary. If it is needed, they can bring it back. So I'm going to get rid of it. So we sort of clean up the data, right? The top here, I'm going to equally delete it because it's not necessary. I'll just insert additional space at the top to make it look clean. And then what else? All right, so now we need to understand the context of this template. So the template is that they have the SOPs, they have the categories, they are counting number of, these are the risk assessment numbers, the reference numbers, right? And then there's also the various parameters. These are all parameters they are looking at. Has SOP been reviewed? Is the text updated? Is photo updated? The new SOP reviewed, risk assessment available? So I can get a context, right? So they use white to denote yes. And they want to actually give room for people to select yes, right? So in order to make sure that I'm not missing anything, I'll just start off making sure that I'm validating some of the entries, right? So I'm going to go like this, approve list. So I'll create an approved list. Now take note that whenever we create an approved list, what it means is that we are trying to control some of the entries, right? So basically the entries we want to make sure they are controlling is these parameters. So it's going to be this packaging and all of these stuff, right? So basically the category. So I'm going to select this. I'll come here and start to create an approved list, right? So I'll just call it an approved list. Or maybe I'll just call it category, right? So these are the predefined list of categories. So this predefined list of categories is what we're going to use the data validation to, control them. So I'll just keep entering them there. Today, I want to make sure that I move very fast so that we can do something very significant as opposed to, stopping halfway because you've exhausted all the time. All right, so we have about 4 categories. So all the 4 categories are in here. I'm going to put this in an Excel table. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure that the header is recognized, right? Because whenever you're inserting a table, you need to make sure that if it has a header, you can actually confirm that it has a header, right? And then it will include the header in the table, right? So basically we start to, now I don't like some of the color scheme. So usually whenever I see that the colors are not according to what I like, I always come to, I come to the view. I come to the page layout. Yeah, page layout. I could change the, the color theme so that it's always the color that I prefer, right? So if I come here, let me see, is that the color I want? Okay, that's pretty much it. That's the color, right? So you can always, let me see the other color as well. All right, I like the previous one. All right, so I'm just gonna insert this and bring some borders in there. Okay, and I want to keep this clean as well. All right, so this is pretty much what we have for our data validation to keep the names consistent. So it means that because we are building a template, what it means is that they can actually change the content of this table, right? They can change the content of it. So that means that anything that they enter, we enter, right? Let me just make it bigger. Maybe additional parameters could be added. So this is just to make sure that when we come here, all right, I just, use this Command Shift down. Command Shift down takes me all the way to the end of the table. And then I would, go to data validation, right? So I come to data, I go to data validation. I use the list and then I click on the, this very section, right? This source. I click on source. It takes me here and then I would select this very one, right? So I'm selecting the approved list to make sure that all the entries will be controlled, right? So if anybody types anything that is not in the approved list, it's not going to be updating here because they're going to get a feedback that the validation restriction, it doesn't match the validation restriction. So basically we are restricting the entries within this very sheet. Okay, so usually I like to change the look of some of the templates. Every time I'm creating this dashboard, I like to change the look. I like to use this very one. Okay, again, when it comes to the we can change the borders. We don't want to make it black, we can make it white. So let's just change the borders to white. Okay, so now it's going to look like this. So this is a bit clean, right? So what we're going to do is that we want to make sure that all of these entries could equally be controlled because somebody can type wrongly, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to make sure that we use another data validation to ensure that all of these entries are equally controlled, are restricted to only Y, right? So I'm going to go to data validation again, and then I'll come to list, and then instead of going all the way to an approved list, I could just type Y here, right? So that means that the entry you want to see in here should only be Y. So what it means is that they can simply click here to select Y. So you can just click here to select the Y, or they could just type, right? But if anybody types a wrong value, it's going to give us that feedback. Okay, so what we're going to do next is that we're going to make sure that we introduce a conditional formatting, because they want to make sure that whenever someone types Y, what happens is that it has to show this color coding, right? So I just come to conditional formatting, and then I go to classic, and then I want file only format cell that contains a specific text. What's the text? The text is Y, right? So I'll just make sure that I go to custom format, and then I choose a fill. So the fill I'm going to be choosing is this green because I want to keep the format that they've used. All right, so I'm just going to hit OK. All right, so what it means is that every time we register a Y, this should update. Now take note that there was actually some colors in there. Those colors were manually entered, so I'm just going to make it a no fill to just make sure that there's no pre-filled color within the cell, right? So now it's going to be based on all the entries that we're going to be making. So once we select this, right, everything should update, right? So the moment is okay, I didn't include this as well, so let me just make sure that the data validation extends to all the sheets, right? So I'm just gonna basically I can do that very, very simple. I'll just row like this. So entire column, I'll use the paintbrush. Okay, I'll double click on the paintbrush, and I'll just click like this to extend to this very one, right? So once we have this in there, what I'm going to be doing next is that I want to make sure that I'm estimating a score. Now they want a system where each of the lines, take note from the instruction, they want each line to be able to generate a score, and then at the end of the day they want to be able to tell the score based on the category. And then we could have another insightful reporting basically based on the parameters that are available. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to introduce a function, right? So now we are introducing a scoring criteria. Now how many are there in all? They're supposed to be answering a total of 5 parameters. They are looking at 5 parameters. So 7 parameters. So these 7 parameters is the maximum of the score, right? So the maximum that we're going to be using to set our scoring criteria is a total of 7, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to use a function where we are going to count how many entries are in here. All right, so we're going to use account A, right? So account A function is basically counting how many entries are in here. All right, so count A, and then we select the range, which is D3 to J4. It's actually J5, right? So D5 to J5. All right, so this whole range, right? And then we close the parentheses. So once we close, take note that the logic of this function is that every entry within the cell, it should be able to sum it up, right? Now take note that this cell format, the format in this cell was a percentage. That's how come you are seeing 700, right? But if it were to be a number, it would have been just 7, right? But we want to make sure that we are retaining the scoring criteria to percentage, so we're gonna keep it like this. So basically, once we count the number of entries in there, it's supposed to tell us how many are there, right? That's the essence of count A function, right? But we are gonna divide that by the maximum score, which is 7, right? So we're gonna go like this. So first and foremost, let's just make sure that we understand the logic of it. So let me just bring everything back to basically numbers. All right, so basically we are counting the number of entries in there, which is a sum of 7, right? So all of these ones, if I select this, it's going to tell us there are 4 entries in here. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to use the maximum. The maximum is the fact that it's a total of 7. Everybody should be able to, all these entries should be able to score against a maximum of 7, right? So that's then introduce that function in there. So if I click on each of them, you notice that 7 is right in there across all the cells within the column. All right, so what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to convert this back to percentage, right? So you can see that we've been able to estimate the score. So this one, once we start selecting Y, it will keep updating, right? So once we select Y, this is going to update up until we select everything. It's going to give us 100% score. Okay, so that's pretty much what it is. We can actually keep estimating the score by selecting Y for each one of them, and then it's going to give us the overall score, which is 100%. So this is calculating already. So now we've been able to introduce a function in here. What we're going to do is that we're going to lock this very cell, right? So we're going to lock it by making sure that if we protect the sheet, nobody can actually tamper with it. So fortunately for us, this column has been locked already, right? So that means we are on track. So what we're going to do next is that we're going to start to generate the report. So we have the approved list, which is the first parameter that has to be predefined by the user to make sure that all of this are coming from that approved list. We're going to now make sure that everything is now properly aligned. So we're going to start with pivot tables. Okay, so at this point, we're going to generate the report based on pivot tables. So how do we do that? To generate a pivot table, we're going to select all of the table like this, Control A. We're going to go to Insert. We're going to click on Pivot Table, and we're going to select New Sheet, right? So New Worksheet. So the pivot table is going to come here, right? So the first report we're going to be expecting should be the score for each of the categories. Okay, now let's call this section source data, because always we like to call where the database is as source data. All right, so here's the source data, and then here is the report. Okay, so the report, we are going to select the fields, right? So the field lists have actually showed right in here. We can see all the list of fields that we have in our database. So we're going to select, the category. So the category is going to come here, and then the ratings, right? So the compliance ratings. But before that, I just want to make sure that all the namings are correct, because sometimes if you don't name them properly, chances are that you want to go back and rename it, and it's going to affect the template. So let's go back and make sure that all the namings of the column headers are correct, or they are probably in good order. So I'll just make sure that there's no typos, no spelling mistakes or anything like that, so that once we are done, there's no turning back. Okay, so once you have this done, I'll just refresh the workbook like this, and the new changes is going to populate like this, right? So we have the categories here, we have the tax compliance ratings here. All right, but we need to make sure that when it comes to percentages, we don't deal in summation. Percentages, it's always an average, so that it's consistent, right? Because if we say sum, what it means is that it's going to be summing up like this, but at the end of the day, you want an overall score, and the overall score can only be an average of all the scores as opposed to a summation of all the score, right? So this section is going to be category score, right? Category score. All right, so we just call it category score, and then we need to format the table. The pivot table must be formatted, or else what it means is that once we refresh the workbook, it's going to be shifting here and there. So sometimes we want to make sure that we format the pivot table. To do that, just right click, go to pivot table options, and then we are going to do something. So the layout, it should not be auto fit. Auto fit column width on update means that every time we refresh the workbook, it's going to shift back. We don't want that. All right, so I'm going to go back again, and then I'm going to go to the data. We are saying that whenever we delete any data, it should not retain it. Sometimes the pivot table will be retaining old data, and that doesn't make it look clean, right? So we're going to get rid of that as well. So usually, if you want to format the pivot table, you want to change the color, you just have to come to pivot table design, right? So there are a lot of designs in here. I usually prefer this one. And then because we are building a report, now there's a report. Because we are building a report, I want to make sure that this sheet is very clean. So I just come to View, and I'll click on Grid Line, right? So Grid Line, it cleans out the entire sheet. You can see that it's very clean now. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to make sure that I increase the font size. I change the font to light. I like it like this always. And then I'm going to do something. I'm going to insert, basically a bar chart. All right, so one thing I'm going to do is that because I want to compare the score against a target, I'm going to introduce what we call calculated field. So to introduce a calculated field, all right, because I want to have a target bar chart, right? So calculated field, I'll just click on the pivot table, and then I'll go to pivot table analyze, and I'll go to field. I go to field, right? Calculated field. So the calculated field is right here. What we need for the calculated field, we want to be able to have a target which is 100%, right? So 100% is same as 1, right? So we're going to insert that. We're going to click OK. So it introduces that in here as 1, and then we go to we go to format settings of this very target that we've introduced, right? We're going to go to field setting, and then we're going to change the format of the number to percentage, right? And we don't want any decimal. All right, so we now introduce the percentage. So what it means is that we're going to be comparing the score. Now take note that each of the category has a score, and the one here is the overall score, because the overall score is an average of all of them, right? We are comparing that against 100%. All right, so what we're going to do is that we can now comfortably insert our report. So if you want to insert a chart or a pivot chart, all you need to just click on the pivot table and then go to insert, and then there are all the options right here, right? So we have the options for inserting a chart. I usually like to insert a cluttered bar chart for a reason. All right, so a cluttered bar chart is actually comparing. You can see one side of the chart, which is the actual. Basically, what we're going to do next is that we are going to basically format data series, and then we're going to overlap it, right? So we're going to overlap it like this so that one goes underneath it. Okay, so we can make it bigger so that we see. So once I overlap it, all right, I'll click on the pivot table field list again. Take note, let me just close all of this. So if you want to have access to the pivot table, all you need to just right click on this, go to show field list, and because I've cluttered the chart, I've cluttered the data series, what I need to do is that I need to bring the target up. All right, so now the actual is right in front of it, the target is at the back of it. Okay, so that's pretty much what we are trying to do. We want to make sure that there's a target line or the target bars, and then we have the actual bars progressively moving towards the target. So what it means is that if you have bigger scores, like you have 80%, it's going to be closer to the end of the target data series, right? So now that we have them introduced, we can just clean up the data a little bit. So to clean up the data, all we need to do is just we could change the colors. So I always like this color. This one is going to be gray, so we're going to choose this color for it. All right, now what I'm going to do next is I'll click on the target data series, like this very data series. And then I come to the borders, like I want it to look a little bit bigger. All right, so I come to the borders and I say solid border, right? And I'm going to increase the size of the border. When I increase the size of the border a little bit, let's say to 6, right? To 6. It's going to extend a little bit, right? It's going to extend a little bit above or extend beyond the actual bar chart, right? So let's make sure that the border colors are the same as the real chart color, right? So just do it like this. So we've been able to introduce the targets. So I'll just get rid of this section because we want to make sure we are cleaning up a little bit, right? So I could now add data label. So this data label, it could be here or it could be within, right? So we just format data label, and we can choose it should be inside. And then if it is inside, we can change the color like this, right? So we can make it a little bit bigger like this, and then that's pretty much it, right? So when it comes to basically these header titles, sometimes you don't want to see average. So what it means is that we can actually take our time to delete this average from showing, but take note that when there's no space, it's going to give you that feedback, right? So we want to make sure that every time we delete the sum off, we introduce a space in there, right? So what we've done is that we've been able to simplify it very well. This stuff I could probably delete it as well. I don't need it. Okay, so I'll just format this. I'll just go to my home tab, and I'll change the font. Usually for this type of chart, I like to keep the font as Century Gothic, right? Century Gothic is very, very clean, and I'm gonna make it a very dark color. All right, I could bring the I need to design the chart, so I come to chart, add element, right? Add chart element, and I'm gonna add a chart title, right? So the chart title, now we can call it category score, right? Because this is actually the scores for each of the categories, right? All right, so this is the category score. I'm gonna make sure that the format of the data labels are all very nice, so it can look like this. So we've done the first report. Okay, so what I can do next is that I can insert a slicer, right? So the slicer is what we use to control the report. Instead of using the filter here, we can use a slicer. All right, so I just go to insert and I come to slicer, right? And the slicer, I want to select the category. So I just introduce a slicer right here and I expand it a little bit, to look nice. Now you can actually format the slicer. You can change the colors and everything to whichever color that you prefer. I tend to like this one a lot. All right. Again, when it comes to this, now let's try to make sure that we wrap the text so that it looks clean. So I'm just going to wrap the text like this. Okay. And then I'm going to resize this as well. And then I can make this one center, center it in the middle. And I could try to, create additional space here so that I can bring this in here. I can resize it nicely. All right. So basically we have the target showing at the background and then the actual is right within it. So as you are progressing, you will be approaching the target, right? So that's what we've done just now. Okay, so this is something that you can always do if you have any parameters where you want a scoring criteria where you can see some scores. You can always use this format where there's a target and then there's the actual. Okay, so we've done that. We are done with the first report. Okay, we're going to move on to the next report. Now let's go back and start the whole process again. Okay, usually I like to make the tab color white. It looks cleaner like that. I like it like that. That's how I always want my tab colors to look. So I'm going to do the same thing for this. All right, so basically what we're going to do next is that we're going to create another pivot table. Now to create pivot table is very, very simple. All you need to do is just click like this, do Control A, and then you go to insert. Now the reason why this is very simple is because we put everything in an Excel table, right? If it's an Excel table, it's easy to just create your pivot table. So just go to click on insert, go to pivot table, and then it's going to tell us, is it on an existing sheet or a new worksheet? So we choose new worksheet, right? So we bring in another report here. You can drag it all the way to the end. And this report, let's see what report we can create again. So basically we have each of the SOP references, right? Now these SOP references, they're quite a lot. There's a lot of them. So you cannot really try to have a score for it, though we could have a report for it, comparing each of them. It will literally be like the same table, because if you have a report that has this and this, and because there are quite a lot of them, then it is not really reasonable to create a report of it, right? Because we can as well refer to the table, or we need to just drag it, basically close all the columns and bring it all the way here. That's if you've been able to freeze panes, right? If you did not freeze panes, then it means that we need to sort of be moving across the sheets like this, right? Let's try that and see. So if I unfreeze panes, what it means is that in order to match, the SOP references to this, we'll probably have to, hide some of these columns like this to be able to see them. Okay, but when we rather freeze panes, right? If we freeze panes, then we can actually come all the way like this and check. Okay, so we don't need a report that, okay, let me freeze panes again. I think I didn't do well. I need to come all the way here. Okay, and then I freeze the panes, right? So I can compare the SOP references to the task completion rate. Now, we don't want a report that is comparing this to this, because what it means is that we are just, we are not creating any real value, because at the end of the day, we can see this right here. So what is really relevant is based on the categories. And that's exactly what we have here, because we're looking at summary reports. We need to summarize the data to something that's meaningful, right? But then again, there's an interesting thing we can do. Let's look at it. We can actually even bring the SOP references, right within the category. So what it means is that you can scale it up a little bit like this, so that you can see within each of the categories, we can see all of these, references under each of the categories. So you can actually filter like this, but take note that it makes the data looks very clumsy. All right, we can actually collapse all of them like this. We can collapse all of them like this, which is fantastic. So again, it's a matter of preference. Do we want the user to be able to scale up like this to see the content? I think that makes sense. So let's make it like that. So we've been able to introduce another twist to this very report. Okay, so we're going to move on to the pivot table that we started creating. So I'll just click on, the pivot table. The field list is already open. All right, so what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to look at the various parameters, right? So these are the parameters. We want to find out how many of them shows as yes. So if it shows as yes, it means that it has actually been, been implemented, right? So we want to look at how many times have all of this been implemented, and we are assuming that all of them has been implemented because they are all important, right? So what it means is that we're going to be analyzing the top these parameters, right? So we're going to introduce them on the pivot table, and what we're going to do is that we're going to select all of them, right? So we're going to look at SOP. Has it been reviewed? Text updated, photos updated. All right, so we're going to keep adding, but take note that the arrangement is not what we like. So even though we are adding, it's not making any sense, right? So what we're going to do is that we want to make sure that we are moving them to this very section, right? So they're all supposed to come here. They're all supposed to be coming here, right? So let's undo it. So we can actually drag and move them to where it's supposed to be, right? So we can do that instead of just clicking. We can just drag. So we can say that SOP must come here, right? Text updated should follow. Photo updated should equally follow. This one must equally follow. All right. So all of these will be following, right? And then we're going to do something once we are done. Okay. So manager has signed off, right? So that's pretty much the important parameters that we capture, right? And then what we're going to do is that we don't want it to show like this. We don't want it to be arranged like this. We want it to be in the value should be in the rows, right? So we bring the value here from column to row, and it arranges it like this. And what we are doing is that we are counting how many of the entries are within the columns, right? So how many times have Y showed, right, in the cells, right? So that's pretty much the essence of count. If you do a rather numerical values, we're not going to be counting the unique entries. We're going to be summing them up, right? So that's the difference between count of and sum of. So we're actually counting all the number of times the Y has appeared within the columns, right? So we can see that they've appeared different at various, categories. At various parameters. Okay. Now we can always format the pivot table. Okay. So this pivot table, we need to format it nicely. And to do that, we need to make sure that we go to open, we open the pivot table options, right? And then what we're going to do is that we're going to get rid of the fact that it should not retain data. The layout should not auto fit. The data should not be retained when it is deleted, right? It's right here. Retain items deleted from the data source. We don't want that. It shouldn't be retaining any item. So we click on it. All right. Again, we can get rid of the count off. We can do that by just introducing a space right in there. Okay, so we can always clean it properly. Depending on the scope of parameters, it's a lot of them. Then it takes a lot of man hours to do that. But this is just one of entries. So we're just gonna actually clear all of this stuff, right? So we've been able to clean it up. We can equally change the the color of the font. I always like the the font color to be Calibra, right? Calibri, the light, right? And I always like it to be 12. And then I like this design of the pivot table. So I like it like this. I want to clean this very, I don't like the grid lines, right? So I'm going to get rid of the grid lines. And now we have it clean like this. So we're going to insert another bar chart. So we go to insert, we go to the chart, and we come to bar chart, right? So there's another bar chart we just created. And this bar chart is basically looking at, how do we call this thing? So what kind of name can we give to these parameters? All right. So I don't know. We can call it action report. These are all actions that they're supposed to be taking. So we just call it action report. We just find out from the person if indeed they prefer to call it action report. But I feel like it's reasonable calling it action report, because you're doing all of these are actions that must be taken as far as the SOPs are concerned, right? So I'm gonna name it. I'll call it action report, right? Now I want to make sure that I'm keeping everything consistent. So I'm going to change the color, the font as well to Century Gothic. I like that very much. I'm going to make it a darker font, and then I'm also going to make sure that the size, let's see the size of the font. That is okay, so the size is still 9, right? So we're going to keep it like that, but you can always revise. You can change the size, you can increase it or whatever you want to do. So this one, I think is okay. Let's see, we want to keep it consistent. So that's 16, right? That's 16. So this one equally should be 16. Or let's make it 12. It's too big. All right, so this is okay. So we can actually format this. We can change the color to whichever color that you prefer. We can clean it up a little bit. We can get rid of all of this stuff. We can get rid of this total as well. And what we can equally do is that we can format the data series and expand the size of the, the gap. The gap should be smaller. So we want to reduce the sizes of the gaps so that it looks bigger like this. Okay, so let's try to reduce the size of our screen for now. So we've been able to introduce another report. Okay, and sometimes I like to introduce some colors on the border of the chart just to make it look nicer. So it looks like this. So what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to insert another slicer, and this slicer is going to be the same slicer as the category, right? So we're going to go like this. So each of the category can see what happened, right? So that's pretty much it. And I'm going to basically resize it, make it look nicer. We can format the slicer a little bit. Now take note that the slicer is what we use to filter the reports like this. You can select everything to see all of them, right? Now we need to add data label, right? So we add data label. So the data labels are outside, which is okay, right? We can equally keep them within and all of that, but I think that when it's outside, it looks nicer when it's just a chart like this, okay? So what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to just resize it nicely so that it looks bigger on our screen. All right, so what else can I do with this? Okay, and what else? I think that I'm done with this report as well. Okay, so what I can do is that I need to connect the report. I need to connect both pivot tables, but we're going to do that when we are creating the dashboard. Okay, so now what other report can we create? I think that we are almost done, or we are literally done, because with a template like this, what is reasonable for really analyzing will be the category, the scores for each category, the overall score, and the parameters, right? The number of risk assessments. Sorry, this risk assessment number, this is just a reference number, so it doesn't add any value at this point for our analysis, because we can't be counting these reference numbers. It doesn't add any value. So what it means is that we are almost done with our report. What we're going to do now is that we're going to create our dashboard, right? So when it comes to dashboard creation, it is based on the database, the report that is relevant and practical, right? So what we know is that the only report that are relevant at this point are these two reports. That's pretty much it. So we want a report where we are looking at overall score. We want to look at the score for each of the categories, and want to look at the actions that have been taken for each of the the parameters, right? How many times have they completed the actions as yes, right? So the yes basically is the fact that they've completed an action. Okay, so this dashboard, we always push it all the way closer to the source data, so that right after building a report or updating your data, just click on the dashboard and then you see everything, right? So what we are going to do is that we want to clean up this very sheet. We're going to clear the grid lines because we don't want it to disturb us. These are all things that disturb the look of the dashboard, right? So we're going to get rid of it. We're going to insert a shape, right? So we'll be inserting a shape like this, which is very, very important, because that's how we try to have control. If you are done, we can be moving them around like this, as opposed to putting it on the plain sheet or the plain sheet, right? But we can actually use a shape like this. Okay, so the next I'm going to do is that I'm going to be bringing these reports in here. All right, so I'm going to bring these reports, but we're going to make sure that we design our background nicely. So this can always be resized to whichever size that we want. So I'll bring this one as well. Okay, so I'm going to bring this equally here, because whenever we are creating dashboard, what it means is that we are bringing all of these charts together, and then we would bring the slices also together. Now we need this slicer. Now take note, the slices are the same basically. So we're going to bring this slicer here as well. So now we are supposed to introduce an overall score. So where can we have the overall score? Take note that the overall score is coming from here. This is the overall score, because this is the average of all the scores for each of the categories, and this is the average of all the scores, right? So we use the average function, function of the pivot table. If you go to the pivot table, field list, you notice that this is actually average. It was there as average. We just got rid of those labels in front of the terminologies. Sometimes we want to get rid of the count of sum of average of those stuff. They can be done, right? So what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to introduce a function that helps me to pick this score, all right? Because if I just use an equal sign to pick the score, what if, it changes? This one can move here and it's going to change, right? So I don't want that. So I'm going to use a function, right? I want to be able to do what we call like index and match function. I'm going to be using index and match function. Like I'm going to make sure that every time we select this and then we select this, it should give me this, right? So I'm going to be copying this. So this one, the grand total, I want the same terminology, the exact terminology. I'll come and paste it here, right? So the same terminology shouldn't change. And then the same terminology over here. All right, so I'm going to paste it right here. The next by it. So I'm saying that if this is selected and this is selected, it should give me what is here. Okay, so to be able to do that, we're going to use the index and match function, right? What I'm going to do is that I'm going to insert the index function. So index function is like a GPS. It tells us where is the data coming from. So the data is coming from here, right? I could extend it all the way down just to make sure I'm accommodating any changes within the range. Because sometimes things can keep extending and it goes beyond the range. So usually if you're doing index and match to pick values, you want to make sure that the GPS, this is more like the map. The map should be wide enough, big enough to cover all the various parameters, right? So basically we have 4, 2 here, and then we have 4 here, but we decide to go all the way down just to make sure in case there are any additions, which we know there wouldn't be, but there's potential for that. All right. So basically when we pick up the index, we select the entire range where the data can be selected. Then the row. So basically we are looking at the row and column. It always references a row and column, right? But instead of just using a number, we're going to use a match function, right? So we're going to use a match function, and match function is almost like VLOOKUP, right? So we're going to look at the value. What is this value? So the value is like A3, right? The reference is A3. All right. So where is the lookup array? Where can we find the grand total? So the grand total is here. So we're going to go all the way here like this. Okay, that's where we can find the grand total. The grand total can be found in this very, row or column, right? It's within this very column, right? So we're going to select that. And then we want an exact match, right? And then we close parentheses. And then for the other one, also, we go to another match function to select the other one, which is AB3, right? That's this very one. Okay. And the same thing, where can the tax compliance rating be found? It can be found here, right? It can always be found here. And we want an exact match, right? So we're going to close it. And then we're going to, make sure that we've closed the parentheses. We hit enter, right? So that gives us a score right here. And then we're going to use a percentage to format it. And it looks right here like as percentage, right? So that's exactly what we have here. 37 is exactly what we have here as 37. Okay. So we are going to do something. We want to estimate the score, but when it comes to estimating score, you can always use progress chart, right? So to use progress chart, what it means is that we're going to use 1 minus this to give us a remainder, right? So basically, we can use this to plot our progress charts. Okay, but there's a twist to plotting progress chart. If you go to donut chart right now, and then we just select donut chart like this, because that's how we used to plot progress charts, right? So this is actually the 37, this is the 63, right? 37, 63. So let's see what happens. Assuming that we go beyond, okay, there's no way we're going to go beyond 100%, right? It's not possible to go beyond 100%, but there are instances where you can go beyond 100%. So assuming our score is 100%, then it's going to give us negative, and the arrangement of this is not going to look correct, right? Because this is supposed to be the progress. So at this point, it looks like we are actually at a certain score, which looks like 80% or 86%, but but in actual fact we are at 120%, right? So usually when it comes to, you know, plotting donor progress chart, we want to make sure that the remainder remains at 0 if this one is more than 100, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to copy this function here. So we go in there and then we're going to enter if the whole of this value, right? If the whole of this value is less than 0, all right, so if it's less than 0, that's if it gets into negative, it should return 0. If not, it should return everything, right? If not, it should return the same score, right? So that's exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to close it. So now we've been able to introduce a system where if it goes to 120 like that, it will still remain at 0. And you notice that the whole pivot, the donor chart or the progress chart is 100. It's literally full, but it doesn't leave any remainder anywhere, right? So let's try to bring back the data because here was based on a function. So now we've been able to introduce a score, sorry, a progress chart, right? So I can control C, I'll control C this, and then I come to the dashboard and I'll paste it here. All right, so I paste it here because you're gonna use it, right? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna format this quickly. So I just format this, no fill, and I'm gonna choose a color, right? Maybe I should choose orange. So the format of the dashboard, the color scheme. So that's where we can be very creative with the color scheme. So in order to find a lot of color scheme, you can always go to online. You can go to the website, you can go to color hues and all of that. You can pick nice color. So I think that I want to pick something that looks like an orange color. So I'm just gonna double click on this. I come to data, basically format data series. Now we are actually formatting data points. Then I go to solid fill and I choose a color, right? So I'm gonna go to more, and I'm gonna go to where it allows me to put hex codes, right? I want where I can insert a hex code, right? So that's pretty much this one, and I'll hit enter. Okay, so I think I did it for the outline. I think I did it for the border. I need to rather do it for the fill. All right, so solid fill is supposed to be this one. We've already selected it, and then I'm gonna double click on the other one. The remainder should be the same fill, all right. But we're gonna give it a 90%. I'm gonna give it a 90% transparency, right? Later we can change the color if you want. So that is pretty much reformatting this one, and then the border should be no fill, and then this one is like this. Okay, so regarding the background of our really the background of our dashboard, we can always choose various colors. You can choose when you go to color view. All right, so let me just try and format and see which nice color I can choose, something that is lighter, right, and much cleaner. So I'll just come here and let's see which one is better. Okay, so basically trying to choose color for we can make it a gradient fill, right? So let's try to make it a gradient color, and then there will be a touch of white in there, right? So I'll just remove this. I'll remove this one, and I'll probably make this one white, and then this one will be like something like this. All right, so later we can change it because I was supposed to just pick the color from the color wheel, right? If you go to a lot of color palettes on the internet, there are a lot of light colors you can choose from, right? So let's look for a light color, very, very light color. Okay, so I'll just go to color wheel on my screen. I'll just use the paint. Okay, so I'll just choose one color here. Maybe I like this one. I'll just choose it. So there are a lot of colors you can actually find on the internet. So instead of this, I'll just get rid of this. I'll choose this one. because I have a color already. I'll just put it in there. I hit OK. And then this one will be like and I have something like this. Okay, so this is not bad, right? You can make do with this one. Okay, so now that I'm done, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna clear the outline of this background. I'm gonna bring a shadow. So just go to shadow. Okay, I just go to shadow and I introduce a shadow in there, right? So what I'm gonna do next is that I'm gonna introduce additional backgrounds because I like to have another shape in there because we have two of the shapes, right? I mean two of these bar charts. So I'm just gonna create additional shape in here, and then I'll just do Control C. Okay, now with this one I probably want to make it the same orange. All right, so I'm just gonna go to format, and then I'll choose the orange, right? So I'm gonna choose this one, and then I'm gonna choose this one as well, and I'll probably get rid of those borders. The borders are not needed. I'm gonna get rid of the borders, right? Okay, so what I'm gonna do next is that I want to make sure that the layout of the dashboard is very, very clear. So let me try to reduce the size of my screen a little bit so I can see clearly. Let me just make sure I center it a little bit. Okay, all right, so with this one, will be on it, so I'm just gonna bring it in front, right? So now take note that whenever you are doing this stuff, you can always play around. All right, so this is properly centered, and then we can basically bring this up. All right, bring it forward, right? It's gonna be like this, but then we need to make sure that the sizes are the same. So I'm gonna bring it up, bring it in front like this. Okay, but I want to make sure that the sizes are the same. So I'm just gonna select both of them, and I'll go to resize it nicely. It has to be the same size. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. So it has to be the same size. All right, so once it's of the same size, I think that this is not bad. Okay, what we do next is that we can get rid of the we'll get rid of the background of the chart, right? So go to format fill, we remove the background, we just go to no fill, right? No fill. So that's no fill right there. And then the same chart, right? This one also, we go to format and we choose no fill. So it's going to look like this. Okay, all right, so now that we can always arrange them. Now that we have this looking like this, let me make it bigger. Now that it looks like this, we need to make sure that the color is probably it has to complement it. So we can make this one white. We're gonna make this one also white. The font should be white. Okay, so everything's gonna be white to properly contrast it. And then this one equally is gonna be white. All right, so within the chart equally, we could make it, we can make it the same orange. All right, so it looks like this. We can change it later on. We're only trying to see how it looks. Okay, the outline of the chart, we need to get rid of it as well. No fill, no outline, right? So this one we can actually make sure that the color is the same, right? So the font should literally be the same. All right, so what we can do is that we can introduce some shadows in here. So let's bring shadow into this. All right, so we have shadow in there. Over here also we can consider shadow to make it look nicer. All right, so we brought in some shadows, right? So we've been able to introduce the first parameter of the dashboard. So we need to make room, right? So we need to make room for the overall score. So let's say the overall score is gonna come somewhere here. So what it means is that we probably have to quickly arrange this one. So we're gonna center it, we're gonna make sure it's in the middle, we're gonna group it. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing for this. Center it, put it in the middle, group it so that we can actually move it around, right? So with this here, we can actually move this. We can move this closer. We can later align it, and then this is gonna be here, right? So this one is a score. So I just basically no fill within this, no outline also. All right, and then we can decide to increase the size of this, or we can just double click on this data point alone, and we go to the border, and we can increase it, right? When we do that, it will make it look much bigger like this. So we can keep increasing it, and that gives it another unique look. So there's another type of progress charts. So let's stay here. I think 15 is okay. All right, so this probably okay, right? All right, so we can equally try to even introduce shadow here, but let's see if shadow would make it look nicer. All right, so there we have it. We've introduced it there. There's a little bit of shadow right there. Okay, so what it means is that I have these parameters. I mean, this slicer, and this slicer cannot really be, it cannot be on the side. We didn't make room for it to be on the side. So what it means is that I could bring this slicer up. So this slicer must equally come in front, right? And then I could make it bigger like this. And then I'm going to format the slicer. So how many of the entries? There are about 4 of them. So I'm going to make it like this, right? I'm going to put it right here if I want. And then I'm going to, format it, a very nice color. Maybe this color is okay, or probably we choose another color. It all depends. Maybe a color like this is not bad, right? We're going to make that one yellow, right? So what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to insert a text box, right? So I go to text box. I draw the text box. Then I click on the edge of the text box, or the outline of it. I hit the equal sign. All right. And then I come to basically the score, right? So the score is here. All right. So when I hit enter, it comes here. All right, I can bring it here, and I'm gonna center it, put it in the middle. All right, I can increase the font size to, let's say, 37%. I mean 36, right? Or I could even make it 48. And then I'm gonna choose a font that I like so much, right? That's Segway UI symbol, right? This very one, I like it so much, right? So I'm just gonna select the outline of the text box. All right, I'm gonna go to no outline, no fill as well. Okay, so there we have it. I just want to make sure that it's properly centered. So I just select both of them. I center it. I make sure it's in the middle, and I group it, right? So we've been able to introduce this very one. Also another, and then let's make sure that the color of the font, right? You can format it. So let's just format the color of the font. We go to the text option. All right, and then let me just push this somewhere, right? So the text could equally be the same orange, right? So I'm just gonna go to the fill, and I choose orange, right? It could be like this, and I think it's nicer this way, right? So let's keep it like this. Okay, so what it means is that if I select this one is going to change, but these two pivot tables, these are 2 separate pivot tables. Okay, 2 separate pivot tables. So we want to make sure that we're able to connect both of them, right? So how do you connect both of them? On this slicer, we right click, we go to report connection, and then we can select this one, right? So what it means is that if I select this is going to show. If I select this is going to show, right? Or I could select all of them, right? So what it means is that we've been able to design the important element of the dashboard. That is the fact that we have the slicer, we have these two, stuff in here, and then we have the overall score, right? So how do we basically finalize? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just make sure that I group, I resize it nicely, because you can just resize it so that it looks very small and nice. And then I'm going to select all of this. Later on, we're going to do something, right? I'm going to select all of this. I'm even going to select the background, and I go to shape format, and I go to group. All right, so I'm going to group it right here, right? So this is actually basically all of us getting ready to basically finalize a dashboard. So one of the things we need to do is that we need to introduce, the header of the dashboard, right? So the header can always be, a rectangle, or anything that you think it's nice to use. So let's go to insert and let's choose a rectangle, right? So we choose a rectangle like this. So we put it right here at the top. All right, so we put it right here at the top, and we want to make sure that it is right at the center. That makes it look nicer. So it has to be at the center. Maybe this one could equally, no, it should be here. This one should be here, and this one equally must cover both of them, right? So we can actually center it. We select the background. We can select. Okay, we've already grouped, but we can still do something, right? So we select the dashboard. We select this one, and then we tell it to center it. So it's going to center it for us. But sometimes as it centers it, it still doesn't look cool, right? So this is better because with our eye, we can see that this is better as opposed to it centering for us. Okay. So right now, what do we do with this? So this is where we can actually format the shape of this very, stuff. This title, we can choose a gradient fill. Okay. I just want to make sure that I've selected only this, right? So I choose a gradient fill, and I want to have it looking, a little bit different. So I'll probably I'll choose a blue black color. That's usually what we like to choose. So we choose black for the extreme ends. So we can choose black for the extreme ends. And then we're going to choose darker blue, right? So a blue will be here and blue will equally be here. Then it looks like this. Okay, we can actually measure how far we are going. Okay, so we can keep going like this. Here is going to be like, let's say 15%, and here is going to be 85%, right? So it can look like this. We can play around, this stuff. You can always play around and choose which one makes it look nicer. All right, or we could equally just okay, so let's go to the size. We can choose rectangle. Okay, let's go with the part. All right, so when it comes to this stuff, you can always play around. Whichever one makes it look nicer. You can change the percentage. All right, so let's not overthink it. So we just have our title here. We can make it bigger. Okay, we can make it bigger like this, and then we can insert a text, right? So in order to do that, we can actually type within it. Okay, we can add text to it, so we can actually type within it, or we can insert a text box, right? So let's just type within it, right? So this is actually tax analysis dashboard, because the template is tax analysis, right? So we can call it tax analysis dashboard. We can bring it to the center, make it bigger. Control all of them and make it bigger. So it's going to look like this. We can resize it nicely. Okay, so basically we've created our dashboard. The next thing we can do is that we can introduce some symbols, right? So we are looking at categories and all of that. Now there are interesting things. Sometimes you can bring those other stuff in there, those numbers. You can always do that. And in terms of numbers, what can we really be counting, right? So I'm just going to check what can we really be counting. Are we going to be counting number of each of them, or what? If you're counting number of each of these parameters, it is simply the fact that we are already representing in the chart. So there's no need to bring those numbers in here. What again can we be capturing as numbers? The total number of SOPs. Okay, that makes sense, right? You can be counting the total number of SOPs. So we can actually bring additional space here, right? So we're gonna try to extend it a little bit to accommodate additional space. But what it means is that our dashboard is now looking very, very big. Like, it's looking very, very big. Let me ungroup yet, because we want to make sure that we can actually access each of the elements, right? So I'll just click this. I'll come all the way. I'll shift it a little bit inside. I'll try to resize it a little bit. Okay, so I'll just resize it right now like this, and I could make room for some parameters, right? So let's see if we can get some parameters. So let me just create another space right here. So this is basically the fact that we are customizing as we go based on what we think is relevant, right? So it's going to go like this. Okay. So what it means is that this now has to properly come here to make sure it's properly centered, right? So when it comes to this kind of stuff, what are the parameters you can look at, right? So the parameters you can look at will be maybe the total number of SOPs. So we need to create another pivot table, all right, and make it dynamic. So I'm going to create another pivot table on a new sheet again, and I'll say SOP scores, right? SOP scores. And then this time around, you're going to select the SOP reference number here and their scores, right? So the scores for each of the SOPs, right? And then we can use a count to find out how many items are in there, right? So you can use a count function, right? We're going to say count A, right? So the count A is going to count how many entries are in here, right? So we're going to go all the way down. And we can even make room to accommodate a lot more. So when we use a count function, is including the the grand total. So we're going to remove that from the calculation. All right. So basically, okay. So let me just do it here. All right. So count A. All right. So we are picking from A4 colon all the way to maybe A300. Okay. So that's pretty much it. I'll close parentheses. All right, and I'll remove one from it, right? So we have 45 SOPs, right? So if I just select every one of them, like if I select like this and I go all the way down, it's right there, 45. Okay, so we've introduced another calculation which we'll be using to insert our values, right? So basically, I can clean this up a little bit. So I'll just remove the grid lines. I'll just format it again like I do for all the pivot tables. So I just go to data, don't retain anything, don't auto fit column when we refresh the workbook. I can now go to design, I'll change the design. I can then, increase the font size. I can choose Calibri as my font because I like that. All right, so that's pretty much it. And I can insert another slicer for basically the categories, right? So that whenever we select the category, we're going to see which ones relate to it. So we've been able to introduce another. So this is where the calculation is. I'm going to shift it all the way back, right? So I'm going to shift it all the way back because I don't want anybody to even see it and tamper with it, right? So I'm just going to expand the filter. I mean the slice. I'm going to increase the size. All right. And then I'm going to choose this one. Okay. So basically the same slicer that we have on the dashboard, except the fact that this does not control the other one. So what we're going to do is I'm going to report connection again and control this very one. Okay. So once we do that, we can control all of that, and that equally controls this value, right? The value here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to come here, and it looks like we could have just one parameter to put here. So let's not overkill it. I'm just going to put it right here. Okay. So let's see if it makes sense here, right? And I'm going to insert, if there's other parameter we can include, we include. I think that these parameters is not dynamic, it's static. So the count of, okay, let's include that as well. Number of actions. These are actions, number of actions. And we're going to also account for, all right, so we need to have okay, you know what? So I'm going to bring it back. I think that we can include other parameters. So that makes sense. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to insert a shape. So there's going to be this line in there. There's going to be a line like this. Okay, I'm going to insert a line. Okay, I can it has to be exactly like this. And then I'm going to a text box, okay, for picking the values, right? So I'm going to insert a text box. The text box can be here. Okay, that's for the name, right? And I'm gonna make a copy of it. That's for the numbers we're gonna be entering. Now this one can be white. You want to make it white so that it can look nice, right? So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna type in something, and what I'm gonna type is gonna be like a number of SOP references, right? Or number of SOPs, basically number of SOPs, right? And we can use a equal sign. to, go pick the number of SOP that we estimated, right? So that's right here. And then I'm gonna like just make sure that I bring it, I select everything, and I take it over here so that I can see what I'm about to do. All right, so the font color, the font sizes should be the same. So this font size is let's make it 12. It has to be consistent as the other one. So this one equally is going to be 12. All right, so we're going to use this one. All right, and we're going to get rid of the format. There should be no outline. There should be no fill as well. And the font, it should be, basically this one. The color should be white. This one also, we can get rid of the, the fill and then the outline. And then I would increase the size to, let's say 28. And this one should be white as well. Okay. And this one should equally be white. So we go to format and we go to the outline and then we choose white. Okay. So right now we can try to, basically, align it properly so that we can make room for maybe another one or probably 2 or something, right? So now take note, if I select all of them, it's going to be dynamic like this. Okay, so if I select this, it tells us there are 12 SOPs. There's a score for packing. There's the number of count of the actions that have been taken. Okay, so basically I'm going to add another parameter, which will be how many categories, right? So the category also, I'm going to use the same function I used for the SOP. So I just copy it. All right, it was at Q4. All right, so I come here, the same thing, I go to Q4. Or I don't want to repeat, so I could just paste anywhere. Let me just paste it here and then double click to make sure that it's referencing, exactly where it's supposed to be. So it's referencing this. I'll just enter it here. Okay, so I just hit enter. All right, so it's supposed to, the count A function is counting everything in here, including the header title and then the grand total. So we can take it out, right? So we're gonna do -2. So that gives us 4, right? It gives us 4. So that means that we have another parameter, which is gonna be the categories, right? So we have another category. We can call it the category. So number of SOPs, how many categories? All right. So let me make sure I select. Okay, I'm not able to select. Let me try to do something. I'm gonna shift it a little bit up. So I have access to the line below this one. I could group it. Okay, let's group it for now so that we can move them. So Control C and Control V, I create another one, and maybe I'll probably create another one. All right, so I have these 3 that I'm looking at. So one is for the categories, number of categories. So we have the number of categories, and we will figure out what else can we introduce here. So here I could select the outline of it. I hit the equal sign and I come to the categories. Now the categories are how many? There are 4, right? So I select 4. Now the same thing, what's the format, right? I just remembered it's supposed to be a type of font, right? So probably I don't like this one. I'll rather use this. So I choose this one, and that is 26. So I double click here. I choose the Segui, this very font, and I make it 26, right? It was 26, okay? And the font is white, right? Now if I select this, take note that each of them update, right? Each of them update. Now what other parameter can I be tracking? Okay, so I could equally be tracking the actions. These are the actions. So the same thing that I did for this, I just do Control C. I come and paste it here somewhere, anywhere, not a big deal. I double click. Okay, so the reference was counting. There's a reference, right? Okay, no problem. We'll just introduce our own reference, right? So count A is counting basically how many items are within this field, right? So we can include everything all the way down -1 because we don't want to include the header title. Okay, so we hit enter. So how many items are in there? There are 7, right? 7 items. That's exactly what we have here. So I'll just come here, and that was going to be like number of actions, number of maybe I could even add more. So number of, I don't know how actually I should even call it, because this is not my template anyway. So that's somebody's work. How would we even call this stuff? These are actions, right? SOP, so you can still call it action, right? So this is number of actions. Number of actions or we can call it task. Okay, let's say actions, number of actions. We can call it actions. So basically, if the name is not what we are expecting, we can change it anytime, right? So I'm going to use equal sign, and then for the action, the task, where is it? Okay, so I put it here, right? So I'm just going to select this. I hit enter. It's this font, and I like 26, right? 26, and I hit, enter. I select this one. Okay, so basically we've created a dashboard. As you can see, number of SOPs is right in here, and then we also have number of categories, number of actions, 7. Maybe there's the last one we can introduce, right? The last one is going to be each of these items, right? So each of these items sums up to something, right? So these SOPs, they're a total of 45, right? They're a total of 45. Okay, that's the SOPs. Okay, so we are looking at not the SOPs, we are looking at this summation, the sum of this, right? The sum of this. So the sum of this is equally an important parameter. So I'm going to use the sum function. All right, and I'm going to select, the sum. Basically, we just want to go all the way down to make sure that it doesn't change. All right, so there's another calculation that's in there. That's 119, right? So that means that we need to resize this properly so that we can accommodate, a lot of parameters, because now we have a lot. All right, so I'm going to shift this one up. So this is going to come up a little, and this one is going to come up also. All right, and this one is going to continue as well. And I'm going to Control V, come here. So we've actually gotten a space for it. And this one is going to be task. How many tasks? But the name can change, right? So you're just giving it a name, which is number of tasks, right? Number of tasks. We can probably call it number of tasks. Okay. Or this one should rather be number of tasks and number of actions, right? I think that we have sort of so action. Okay, so maybe this one should be task, this one should be action, because the task is basically the fact that it's more detailed. Each and every task you need to take. And this one will probably be the overall, the bigger, the higher level action, the higher level task, right? So the task should be 11. So we shall probably call this one task rather. Number of tasks. No, number of actions, right? Okay, whichever way it is, we would clarify with the person to just confirm that how does it really want to call it, right? So I'm just going to use the equal sign. I'm going to go to where the the calculations are. It's right here. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to select this. I'm going to change it to Segway, and I'm going to increase it to 26. All right, Segway UI symbol. Okay, so we have our these stuff in here. We need to now align them properly. So go to shape, you go to align. We can align to the left, right? So that it's properly aligned, right? And then we can group it. And then we group it together with the back, right? But before we group it, we need to make sure that that is equally aligned to the left. Let's center it rather. Okay, we can see if it's centered, how does it look? I think it looks nicer when centered. So we're gonna do it like this. So we've been able to do this. We have this, we have this, we have that, we have this, and we have this, right? So what else? We can bring in some symbols. So the symbols are basically what we always make it look nicer. So we're gonna go to symbols, and then we bring in some nice symbols, right? So these nice symbols we could choose. So number of SOPs, we could put symbols right beside each one of them. What it means is that we're gonna expand this a little bit to accommodate some symbols, right? So it's taking time to load. We're gonna have some symbols showing right now, and we're gonna figure out which ones will be relevant, right? So for categories, so when it comes to selecting symbols like this, it is always like based on your own preference, what is reasonable, what is nicer. Okay, so let's keep going, right? At least let's select what we can potentially use so that we don't go back and forth. So I'm going to select this and that. There has to be something that looks like overall score, right? So I'm going to find where I could have an overall score. All right. If you're joining us for the first time, you're welcome to Shexel Live. This is where we do customization so that you can see and take inspiration from what we've been doing. You can equally use this to create your own template, or you could get in touch so that we customize the template for you. All right. So I'm still figuring out which symbol to use. Sometimes I get into this analysis paralysis, and I'm confused because usually when I'm given a lot of options, I tend to really struggle to make a choice. So I always prefer I have just a few options to choose from, and these options should be the best options, right? So I have to keep going. I can't find what I need. Let's keep going. All right, so we are progressing very well with this template. I have a lot of things I'll be doing tonight, so I need to make sure that I wrap up quickly and then proceed as well. Okay, it's a lot. Okay, let's probably something that looks like a report. Okay, you can pick some of these stuff, right? You can choose something here. This one, we can pick it. And then we need something that like a target, right? Something that looks like a target. All right, so I didn't plan this tutorial. So I didn't plan the font I was going to be using and all of that. But let's see what we can gather from here. I don't have to waste too much time. It's not necessary, right? But that's basically what happens with me. Analysis paralysis is my problem. So when I have a lot of options, I'm confused. Okay. All right, so let me just insert the ones that I've picked. At least we can start with this one. There are about 3 of them. All right, so just load in. All right, so we have it in here. So we just reduce the size. We go to graphic format. We reduce the size, right? We probably choose 0.5, and then we make sure that all of them are in front, right? They're already selected. They're all in front. I just bring it here, and then I change the color. I go to format. I go to fill. I change it to white, right? White. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to put one here. I'm going to put one there, and I'm going to keep one somewhere, right? Now, the thing is that these symbols we chose are not the best of the symbols you can use. Let me see if there's any other thing. Target, something that looks like target. Okay, so this is just for tutorial purposes, right? So I have this. You can select this target as well. I'm going to insert that in there. Okay, so this one, maybe there's no space for it. Okay, there's no space for it. Okay, so basically we don't have space for it, right? There's no space for it. Okay, what I'm gonna do is that I need to give it a description, right? So I need to insert another thing, another font, right? Another text box. So I think we are almost done with this tutorial, right? This text box, I'm going to call it overall score. All right, and I make sure that it is in front. I bring it in front. I bring it here. So this is the overall score. And then I increase the font a little bit. And that would be this one. I'll get rid of the fill at the back, and then the no fill as well. And this will be overall score. So this one can just be by it or something, right? So we have been able to introduce some, basically some symbols for the chart, for the dashboard. Though we could equally, do for all of them, right? We could have one for the one here, one for the other one, the one there. So I'm not seeing the ones that are a very good option to use. Okay, so this actually delaying us a little bit, but let's assume that we don't need those stuff in here, right? So let's assume we don't need those stuff. Those symbols are just, you know, extra feature that makes it look nicer. So almost all our template, we always have our logo in here, but this is not our template. We did customization for the user. So I believe that the user is going to find this very nice. Or let me see if you can change this color, right? We can change this color and bring a little bit of shadow in there. Okay, so regarding that, perhaps it's better we use you know, this type of shape, and then we introduce the format on it. Okay, so we have something like this. All right, so it's just a matter of choice, right? When it comes to some of these stuff, okay, we can do a lot of things to it. All right, so let's assume that this is what we've been able to do, okay? We can increase the size of this thing here. All right, so we just introduced, you know, some sort of gradient fill around the border. Okay. All right, so that's pretty much what we've been able to come up with. Basically, whenever we are creating dashboard, it's based on what the report, the kind of report we can generate. All right. So after we finish creating, we need to make sure that we, you know, move and don't size with the cell. And then, all right, we want to make sure that, all right, so basically we can do whatever we want to do with this slicer. It could be this, it could be that, it could be any type, it could be whichever color we want. Maybe this is better. What it means that when we select this updates, when we select this updates, when we select this updates, right? When we select all of them. So we've been able to bring some perspective into this template by giving it a unique structure like this. So in order to make sure that this template can further be updated, we need to just create room for the person, right? So create more room for the person to keep updating, all right? And that room, I think we need to keep going, make it a very long one for the person so that there's no need to come back for us to extend any table. So we're gonna go all the way down, all right? And then we're gonna introduce a function which says that if blank, if zero, okay. We can introduce a function that says that if any of this, if this or this or this or this or this or that is no. Okay, if here is blank, put blank, right? So if the first cell, if A5 equal to blank, put blank. If not, return, right? So that helps us to clean this up, right? So we've gotten rid of all this stuff in here. I think that the yellow thing we see here, the amber color we see here, it's a manual entry, no issues, right? So basically what we've done is that we've been able to transform the data, we've been able to introduce a dashboard, we've been able to basically introduce additional report for the user to utilize. We did the calculation and everything. So it's just a simple template, right? So guys, let's go back to the original template and let's have a look. I didn't keep original templates because I started doing the customization based on the original. I'll just go back and look into my email and let's have a look. Okay, so that we can compare and contrast, right? So we've been able to do something very, very amazing on this very template, right? So I'm just going to open the original file. All right, but before that, let me close this, right? Because I don't want okay, I'm gonna still keep it. All right, I'm gonna keep it there, but I'll just open the other one. So where will I find it? Let me go back to my inbox. I didn't keep it. Okay, so let's compare and contrast the original one, right? And let's see how far we have come. Okay. Okay, for strange reason, I can't find the original one. It's in my inbox somewhere, but I couldn't find it. I would have actually loved to compare and contrast so that we can see how far we came with a very simple template, but what we've been able to do with it. All right, so we couldn't find it. All right, that's not a big deal. Okay, so if you want to see how the original looked like, we can always go back and have a look at, we can always go back and have a look at the original template. So beginning of this video, the original template, we showed it, right? So you can understand. So this is basically what we've been able to do. So once you click on this, you're gonna see the parameter. This is the category. So you can see the number of SOPs under this category. There's one category. There are 7 actions related to it and how many tasks are related to it, right? So we come in here, we can see. All right, so when we filter by the category, there's a category. We filter, there's a total of how many? There are 12, right? 12 parking. So that's it right there. The SOPs are 12, right? So there are 12 SOPs. Basically, these are the SOPs. There are 12 of them. And then the sum of this, the sum of all of these actions that they took is basically what we have here, a total of 49. And then these are the 7 main, basically the parameters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so once we select all of them, we're gonna have the 7 in here, the 4 categories, the 45 SOPs, and all of that. So this is exactly what we've been able to do. In order to see the original version of the template, just start and go back to the, basically where we started, right? So gentlemen, thank you all for your attention. I believe that you find this tutorial very, very insightful. If you want to customize your template, all you need to do is just get in touch, or you can actually use some of these stuff that we are doing as inspiration so that you can create your own templates and bring some insight into your database. All right, so thank you all for engaging with us, and do well to subscribe to our channel. because you have a lot of amazing stuff that will be coming your way. All right. So without wasting time, let's let me just wish you guys goodbye and see you again in another video. Bye for now.